Welcome to the Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Vision, goals, what do you do with them? How do you mix them? Today, I am joined by one of my favorite people, and that's the beauty of podcasting and just the type of investing that I do is that I get to surround myself with just high caliber, amazing people. But today, my high performance coach, who has unlocked everything in my life since January 2020. I don't know if you can believe that. But Faisal, I would love to just say thank you so much to come on. Repeat guest. You were only my third repeat guest. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, top three.
I know. So a mutual friend of ours actually has been on twice, which is really fun. So way cool. But I do want to give a little backstory before I start drilling you with questions. I do want to give this as maybe like proof of concept. If you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you know that coaching has made all the difference in my life. And recently I was at an event and I was speaking with people about, how did I make all the transitions in my life? And really the genesis of this podcast, it's one thing to have a dream and an idea. It's another thing to take action on it. And when I started working with Faisal, you know what you said? You're like, I don't know if you remember this, but you're like, Julie, what date? What's the date? When are you launching it?
I remember that.
Right. And so you made me set a date and, you've just taken me through so much important work that has allowed me to grow and flourish. And I think that the podcast and the mindset episodes are just such a byproduct of everything that you've, supported and unleashed in my life. So I just want to say thank you and encourage people to say coaching makes all the difference in the world.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And I did challenge you. And there was.
You always challenge me.
It wasn't no problem. But it's beyond just the date. Like the date in itself is not as important as what I saw and what you showed in that session, and that was very powerful because how you were, like who you were in that moment was very different than what I saw in your potential. And that's the power of potential, is that what I saw was somebody on stage helping people. I was like, oh shit, this needs to move forward. And I knew that you had that fire, that all you need is a little bit of push. And then you're one of the few people that I've really, really enjoyed working, because it actually doesn't take much to challenge you, Julie. You're a very easy client. But you're also a hard client in the sense that you want to grow more and you want to challenge yourself to more. So a lot of times when we're working, you've already challenged yourself 10 steps and I have to find a way to do it on the 11th step.
You're Googling during our sessions.
What do I do with Julie?
That's pretty much a question everybody asks, what do we do with her? But you hit on something right there, Faisal. And that was, and I remember distinctly mentioning this to you. And if you're listening, I think this is going to resonate with you, especially like I always talk about activating that deeper purpose that we have within us. And I remember distinctly telling you, I know I have something with me. I know that there's, this other woman inside of me, not like I'm multiple personalities, but I knew that I needed to grow in order to, I could see a faint vision of who she is, but I'm like, I told you, I'm like, I want to meet this person. She's there. I don't know how to access her. And so I had this faint vision of who she is, but I didn't have the resources, even with reading, I didn't have the resources to, figure that out and kind of break down the walls to open the door to access, the other potential within me. And that's really, you led me through a lot of exercises to really hone in that vision and, a lot of further exercises to, help me release this or find it. There are so many different ways we can put it. So I just want thank you for that. But I want to talk to you because right now everybody is, wrapping up 2021 and they're getting ready and they're sitting down, making out their goals for 2022. And they have all these great ambitions and they know that they can accomplish that, but they're really not sure how they're going to go about it. There's just a lot there. So I want to open the floodgates to say, let's have a very distinct conversation to serve people in, how they are approaching their vision for 2021 and beyond, and how those goals that they're setting are going to be incorporated.
Yeah, I love that question. I think that's really powerful. I just want to stress on what you said on the coaching side, and it's something that most people don't realize. We equate coaching to kind of life advice or life coaching, life advice, stuff like that. Now you're a coach too, Julie. And the thing, it doesn't matter how many books you read, how many podcasts you listen. It's not about the information that goes into your mind. It's about how you process that information and how you embed it as a part of who you are. And that process is that most people who are listening to this, I know that if they're investors, they're professionals who've worked in their field, they have a high level of success in their life and they've done a lot of amazing things. And they understand the value of implementation. But in the meantime, they're going through books after books, podcast after podcast. They're very helpful in getting perspective and helping you get information. And part of it you might be able to apply. But there are things in the human experience that you simply can't do that with information. That requires an experience. And coaching essentially is an experience. And unless you've had it, you don't know what it is. And nobody can actually explain it to you. They can give you pictures of it. They can give you, it's like somebody trying to show you pictures of Mount Everest. And you haven't gone there, the Himalayas. And the experience is very, very different. It's nothing like the picture. The picture does not do justice. But most people don't even have that picture of it. So I just want to stress on that, is that coaching is one of those fields, assuming that it's a coach who knows what they're doing, assuming that somebody who's there with their heart and they want to serve. What you're going to go through is going to be transformational. And you're going to step into the identity, like Julie's talking about, the person you're meant to be, the potential you're meant to have. And I'm talking about the coaching, essentially transformational coaching or high performance coaching, however you want to look at it. But there are different types of coachings as well. But generally speaking, that's what it might be. And I just wanted to clarify that part. But yes, going back to your question.
Wait, so let's go into a further clarification, because I had a friend and she's like, so it's like therapy? I'm like, no, it's not like therapy at all. Right. And you're so right about the whole experience and what is so easy to do for us high achieving people. We can you've called me out on this, especially recently. You called me out. You're like, Julie, that's really great. You've created these really nice, neat mental compartments for these concepts. You've created a mental map. That's really great. And it all had to do with certain relationships in my life and how I was, engaging in those relationships. But I had the complete disconnect with my emotions. And that's something where even when I was recently at an event, I noticed this, there's oftentimes this disconnect between what we are thinking and high achievers are very capable of being analytical and creating very neat mental snapshots of everything. But that connection, that actual connection with the emotions that allows you to connect with your vision, with your purpose, and really for me, like super important with people, there's a disconnect when you have this mental world that's not connected with your heart. It's like you have to be fully connected. So I said it, I know I touched on like 3 different things right there between like therapy and compartmentalizing and connecting with emotions to connect in life. But I think that those are also like really important facets that make this model really important.
Yeah, and just so we can move towards the vision, just to quickly clarify that, and in coaching is one of those fields that came out of the amalgamation of different fields. So there are aspects of therapy and psychology that are in it, but it's not that. There are aspects of neuroscience that are in it. There are aspects of philosophy in it, spirituality is in it, there's histories in it. The coaching in the normal, what people consider coaching for teams, football teams, and all sorts of stuff, that aspect is in it. Training is in it, leadership is in it. So many aspects have come together in a field that's very interesting, because it's not normal in the sense of an expert where you're looking up to that expert for answer. Actually, most coaching sessions is that the coach is looking for the answers for the client from inside of them versus from themselves. They're seeking the wisdom that people have to begin with. They just haven't been taught to connect to that intuitive side, to their wisdom, to the things that they already actually know. And they've paid attention to those mental models. Most of it are given to them. And there's just some of them work, some of them don't work. Some of them are dangerous, downright dangerous to move forward, and it could create all sorts of negative patterns. So a coach brings knowledge, perspective, methods from different fields to actually help you move forward in your life. I'll quote Brendan Burchard, who said this and one of the great coaches of our time. He's the one who trained me as well. He said that in a podcast interview, that I don't get paid to teach people things. So as a reference, the last time I checked, he gets paid, one of the highest paid high performance coaches in the world, $250,000 per year to work with him for a few sessions. He gets paid to move people forward. He doesn't get paid to teach people things. Very different.
It's a big difference.
Huge difference. And why are these multimillionaires and billionaires paying him that? Because they actually see the ROI. They're not looking for the good feel. Well, the good feel will be part of it.
Right. Well, and that return is, and as I've spoken with people, if you're not evolved as an individual, you can't, it's like a series of doors. So I met this woman at the airport as I was traveling home, and I gave her that analogy. If all the listeners have heard this a million times, but if you looked at life as a hallway of a series of doors, like Chronicles of Narnia, you go through the wardrobe, you open, and you're in a completely different world. But what if there's another world beyond that? But you just need to access that door, but you don't know until you find the door and you open the door, and then you can walk through that door. Once you get in the hang of this, once you realize and you build and flex that muscle, you realize, holy smokes, there's like the endless versions of evolution for myself. Like, I can just continually evolve. This is extraordinary. And there are all these other worlds in a, figuratively speaking, that I get to experience along this journey. I never want it to end.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful picture. And we can put it in terms of vision and go towards that. Well, what is it and why it's important, and how does it fit into that endless possibility of adventure, journey, potential, whatever we're going towards. And one of the things that, and this is something that came out of my coaching experience, as I started, and I've coached real estate investors for the past 3 years at least, and a lot of these guys very successful in their careers. They've worked hard to be where they are, and they've come to a point where they've realized that they've hit a ceiling in terms of their career, and a lot of times it's not enjoyable what they do. And they want that freedom. They want that freedom to experience, to learn about themselves, to learn about the world. They want the freedom to connect with their family. They want the freedom to actually understand what their purpose and legacy might be in this world. And as they go towards this, and this is over and over, I would ask them, like, so tell me a little bit about your vision. Like, if you were to look ahead 5 to 10 years down the road, what do you see? And almost always I heard this phrase, like, 8 out of 10 times, maybe 9 out of 10 times, well, I want to have $10,000 in cash flow, $50,000 in cash flow per month, $100,000. I want to have this, that, and the other, and I want to have the time freedom to do this. I'm like, okay, great. What's your vision? And it wouldn't register, and I assumed that people would know that, and I didn't realize that because I had to work on this for a while. And then what made it worse is I went back, because I have a mastermind and I help train other coaches, and I went back to check in there. A lot of coaches don't understand the difference, and so it got me thinking, like, how could it be? Like the thing that helped me and has helped me, my clients, to move forward, most people are not aware of it in that way. And it's not just me. I realized this. I learned it from amazing leaders. I learned it from people who have done it. These giants who have done it over and over in history, that the one common theme among leaders, people who have done anything of significance, you're going to go back and see that they had a vision. They didn't have goals, they had a vision. Goals came much later on. They had a vision for themselves, for their path, but also for the people in their community that they co-created that vision with. And that's what created transformations in the world. That's what created movements. That's what created so many incredible things. Go back to communities that kind of like spread wildly in the world. Go back to ways of living, religions. Like they all started with a vision that somebody had. And a lot of times we think, oh, it's a thought. Like everything's, like it's famous in Napoleon Hill's book, everything starts with a thought. Well, there's a difference between a thought and a vision, because a vision is not just a thought. It engages our whole experience. It's a reality that we're creating. And we'll talk about what that means. And this is what got me into it, is like, okay, so it doesn't exist, maybe. And I got clues from different people, but I'm like, maybe I need to build something around this. And that was my clue. And I incorporated that into my practice, into my coaching practice, into my training workshops that I do, that this is the essential key. Before you start anything, you need to understand what is it that you see deep within your heart, not just in terms of the thoughts that you have. And most thoughts are given to you. They're not a part of necessarily of your potential, of who you are. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And it might make more sense to me because I've gone through this process. And I remember I was one of those people, yep, I have to raise my hand. I was one of those people where I'm like, well, and it was like these very these goals, such as I want to make X amount of dollars, passive income, cash flow each month. And there is this complete disconnect from vision, and absolutely 100 million%. There was a disconnect between, because I was living in my mind. And so it was like, well, I can't do that because I forget all the cans and can'ts and what forget all of that. Like once you activate and you just release that vision. And I remember going through your vision training and just being blown away at what I saw life could be. And so it was just that willingness to say, okay, I can step back from what I have constructed in my mind with all of these mental components and, my skills, my abilities and such. I can step back from that and enter this whole other world where there are zero limitations and I can see it. What is that expression? If you can see it, if you can see it, if you can believe it, if you can dream it, all of that, then it can become your reality. You kind of follow that line of thinking, and that vision, it was there. And I mean, I was able to speak at an event. I was able to, when I look at where I've come since doing that initial vision session with you, I see things coming about. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. And that's an experience. So I'm curious, and then you can talk about it from the other side perspective, is that when you were, especially when I would take you through the visualization, and that's, which is not just, hey, I'm writing down things and thinking about it in my head. you're going to go and experience this world that you're creating. And then some people have gone through that, but it just depends what is it that you see. So what happened there? Like, would you say that that was less real than what you're experiencing now? More real? What was happening?
I would say, I feel like, and I literally am going back to this image I have from that session, and I can actually just see that walk. So it's like current self walking towards future self. And I can see that progression from where I was to who I'm growing into. And there's evidence, there's proof of concept of what's taking place. And, I want to throw an asterisk in here. And that is that for me, I mean, Faisal, my faith, like I have a very strong faith, like just very grounded, very strong faith for me. And I think for many people, this concept, one of those limitations that we often put on ourselves is, well, this doesn't align with my faith. And so I had to actually work through a lot of things to say, how does this not align with my faith? How does this, right? So this, like my entire process, even engage the process, I had to do some work on the other end of things that would give myself permission to engage so that I could move forward. And ultimately it's like, well, God created me in a very unique way, as I believe all people are created with these amazing, like just this amazing potential. I want to use that potential that I was created with. So what's the best thing to do, right? I don't want to. So anyone who grew up in a church, setting will be like, hide that light under a bushel. No, like you don't want to hide your light. So, how do you help that light grow and maybe turn into a big bonfire or something? I don't know. But it's like, we have a responsibility, even if you're a person of faith, there's a responsibility to learn how to activate what you were created with. But I've never mentioned that on the podcast, but I think I'm finding that that's very important, and that is a challenge for many people.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's, I've had to, as a coach, learn ways, because most of the time I'm talking to people who are not of my belief system, who are not of the way that I think about the world. And initially I made some mistakes around that, because I started becoming a preacher. Not a coach, definitely not, and started to kind of try to shift people's beliefs around that stuff, especially people who were open to it. But I quickly found out, people's beliefs are incredibly powerful. Why not leverage that?
Yes.
Why not use it for them? And so I think that's what we need to start with, is break down, like, what are these? We talked about like thoughts, mental models, beliefs. What are they? And I'm going to say something that most people might not believe, or they might not think it's true. But if you're in the world of neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, you will see as one of the most prominent things in the past few decades is to figure out the nature of reality. And we human beings have been trying to do that for thousands of years, but now we have better tools to try to understand, well, what is reality? What is our purpose here on the philosophical end? And how do we make sense of what's real and what's not, and what it really is? What appears real to us, our perception, and is there an objective reality outside of that? These are very deep questions that philosophers, neuroscientists, and all kinds of experts are trying to address. And so how do we make sense of the world? So a lot of people might not realize that if you look at the evolution of human beings, religion was one of the most important parts of that. As much as religion has given me a lot of pain in my life,
I think it gives everybody a lot of pain. And like, quite frankly, I don't care what your belief system is. There's always a level of pain.
Yeah, but more specifically, it's the corruption in religion that has given a lot of people pain. And every religion has gone through its corruption period, and they continue to go through it. But if you look back, one of the transformational things from an evolutionary point of view that Dr. Noah Harari talks in his book *Sapiens* is that religion was the point where human beings at a biological level could sit together, could figure out how to work with each other beyond 150 to 200 members. Before that, as soon as we would hit that number, we would divide into clans. We still see that in the animal kingdom. So, for example, chimpanzees, as soon as they hit that number, around that number, they divide up. They can't communicate with each other. They can't work together with each other. There's no normal process. So religion was one of the key components where values, vision, and so many things aligned, and hundreds of thousands of people to come together. And it has had its evolution. And originally it started with like gnomes and animal spirits and stuff. Later on, it went towards polytheism, pantheism, and slowly, as it has gone through the evolution through collective cycles, it's gone to the latest one is monotheism, and it came in the three Abrahamic religions: Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and they have carried forward that theme of religion. But what is religion? Religion, as we understand it, is the outer expression of a human experience. Now, there's a divine component to that we're trying to make sense of it. Every religion has its own claim as to what that is and what that, but they try to tell it in their own stories, in their own ways. Nobody knows which religion has the answers, but I would say that they all have the answers in their own ways. And I've learned from all of them. Well, the ones that I've studied, at least. What you find out is that, and religion is deeply embedded into our psychology. So it doesn't matter what you actually believe. You could be a complete atheist and your psychology will be very religious in nature. Why? Read this book by Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion, one of the founders of psychology, who had worked with these professionals who considered themselves to be very secular, very atheistic by nature, but most of their dreams were religious by nature. And the symbolism in their dreams, the way they looked at their life, the way they looked, it was all around religion. And to Carl Jung, that was an indication of the deep roots in our unconscious, not even subconscious, in the collective mind of human beings, what it is. So it is a very essential part of human beings. And if you can't make sense of it and align that with who you're becoming, it will hold you back in ways that and this is why most people are held back by their religion, because they understand their religion based on what they're taught, not based on how they have understood and how they can connect with it.
Mic drop right there. Exactly, like that final point right there. They understand their religion as how they're taught. And so there is that point of reconciliation to, what do I believe? How do I believe that? What do I find to be true? And a lot of people, that takes work. It's way easier to just, go to your church, your synagogue, whatever it is that you're going to. It's way easier to just go kind of maybe clock your card and leave, versus to actually engage. And regardless of what somebody's belief system is, like, being engaged is what unlocks all that meaning, that context, that relationship, that potential.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and this is the part that might confuse people a lot, because every person, doesn't matter which religion you will come from, there will be two sides to you. There will be an exoteric side of religion and an esoteric. And I don't even want to exclude people who consider themselves to be atheists or agnostics or something, because I would say, and I've said this before, I think they are more spiritual than religious people a lot of times. Listen to some scientists when they talk about the universe. We come from stardust, and listen to their body language. They are evangelists and their rituals are different. Their way they have the mental model is different. They don't call it religion, but there's a human experience around that. So it doesn't matter what world you come from, there will be that exoteric and esoteric version. Exoteric is the thing that where you go to church, mosque, synagogue, wherever you go to temple, and you congregate with your community, and it's more about the community than it is about the spiritual side of it. There is a collective spiritual side, but then you will have your deeper spiritual aspect, your connection to divine, to God, to the nature of being, whatever you want to call it. That nobody can give you. I don't care what church you belong, what mosque you belong, what temple you belong, what teacher you've been around. If Jesus or Buddha came in here, they can't actually make you connect with that. And they said it themselves over and over that you need to make that decision. And that is something that actually takes work. That is something that takes courage, that takes openness to connect with that. And nobody's interpretation will help you at that. That requires you to go deeper within yourself. And if you can find that spiritual power, if you can find that spiritual connection, that depth, there is no limits, because you understand that you weren't here to be mediocre. You weren't here to just kind of float through life. You were here for whatever reason you feel and connect with, and you begin to explore that. And you start to go on this adventure, which is very different than the life of comfort that you had created based on what you were taught. And that's where the vision piece comes in. And I want to break it down with that.
Love it.
Is that when you create goals, and I want to give a couple of scenarios here. Now, think about a person. Most people, most of your listeners might be on that boat. You've gone through life following a mental model of how life should be. You go through life, go to school, go to high school, go to college, university, get some training, and you get on the corporate ladder and you climb that up. And you get to a point, and you can even add entrepreneurship to that, or you start a business and you get to a point at your 40 or 50, whatever, or 30, and you look back, and the words of Alan Watts, man, I made it. And then you're like, now what? This is it? This is it? This is what life was. This is what I worked for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then you go back and try to talk to other people who had given you the advice to go towards this. They don't know, because they haven't figured out what's past that. It's like, well, this is how life is. You should be grateful for this. You should appreciate this. Don't be. And then people start to feel guilty. It's like, maybe I should be grateful for this because this is all life has to offer. But that is not true. So what most people follow is that path that's given to them based on a collective vision of what the world needs to be. You're following somebody or a collective vision or a mix of those, and your goals are aligned with those. So your goals are the timelines that are within that giant vision. And for most people, that giant vision is to go towards it. Now, nothing wrong with the corporate world, nothing wrong with becoming an entrepreneur, any of that. It is the lack of substance within that process. It's the lack of you within that process. And the way you determine whether or not there's substance or not, you wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, or you just check in with how you feel every morning. If you don't feel excited, if you don't feel connected, if you don't feel fulfilled, if you don't feel loved, if you don't feel those things in your life, you have followed somebody else's path.
That's so terrifying.
Yeah.
What's so terrifying about that also, I just want to interject. I don't even want to stop you because I'm like, yes, keep talking. But somebody told me, I'm looking for a note on my desk because I wrote it down, and he has this expression. He's like, yeah, so many people are just droning. I'm like, wow. Yeah. Just, I like that versus a zombie type thing. It's like, they're just going through the motions. It's like, it's not even their life. They're living this life that has been imprinted on them by the outside world instead of saying, what's my life?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that themes like zombies is such a popular thing in our culture. There's a reason why like automation and technology and like that droning part is that everybody's going on automation towards whatever they were told to be. They're sheep, zombies, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. This is not a degradation. This is not a way to insult people, but it's a way to help people realize that, are you really living the life you're meant to live, or you're living the life that was given to you? And not everybody will connect to this. I would say a very, very small portion of the population, most of the members, like the people, listeners to this podcast, will connect to this. but most people in the population won't. We don't actually understand why that is, why most people go towards that automatic zombie state. Maybe that's a role in the human collective consciousness. And maybe your role is different just by the fact that you're listening to something like this. And there's a phrase that I've heard for the past 6 years, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Right. Right.
So the fact that you're doing the things towards whatever you're doing, it's giving you signs that you're ready for something different.
Okay, I'm going to interject because I'm using interject instead of interrupt. Do you like that?
I like
semantics,
it.
Same
it's a
thing,
good cover word.
Yeah. So I'd like to add to that for me, I felt everything. I remember as a kid feeling like I have something really great to give this world. I remember after going through a really rough, and people listening know I went through a really devastating divorce in my early adulthood. That's just, life, death situation rattled my world. It was, just intense. And even then I'm like, I chose life. I chose that because there's something more I'm supposed to do here, and that constant search. So like somebody might be listening and saying, yeah, I've been looking for the teacher for a really long time, or I felt this. I felt like I was ready, right? I felt like it took me way too long. But I mean, I was always doing the personal growth, but dang,
that's a belief.
I started coaching.
It took me way too long. So as a coach, pay attention to that, because who decides that?
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like we know, and this is like, you have to understand like where human beings are. Like just collectively as human beings, we lose perspective. And I don't know if anybody has seen this kind of pie graph. Like it's like this round, I forget what it's called. You'll find it on the internet. But it will show like a very small slither. It'll say shit, shit that you don't know, and then the rest of it, 99.9% of this shit you don't know. And that's the state human beings are in. Like just by the estimate that scientists, which I might add that scientists have an ego there, and the inflated ego we all do, will say that we know 1% of what's happening in the cosmos. I don't think we even know that, but let's take that very unconservative as the number. 1% of what is possible, what we know, what we can use, we understand as human beings, as a species. And we claim to know what our potential is, what somebody else's potential is, what human potential is, what is possible here. Like, if you can't put that in perspective, everything will seem like a disaster. We are on this incredible adventure, hurtling through space on a physical plane and a tiny little blue dot, and and we don't know how this blue dot connects to everything else. We have some rough assumptions and models around that, but we don't know what's happening. We have no idea. And if you think deep enough about this, first is going to terrify you. Second, it'll be like, holy shoot, this can't be random.
Right. No random. Well, okay. So let's get back to the vision and the goals, because I don't want to run out of time to make the correlation between the two. So okay. Let's go back there.
Yeah, let's do that. So now going back to vision. So, and just to make it a little bit more practical, when I'm talking about the vision, a vision includes a bunch of elements, and I put them into three major categories. There are a lot of subcategories, but three major categories you can think of it, that if you were to look ahead 5 to 10 years down the road, and there are some things that you need to clarify, because most adults, when you tell them to imagine their future, they will work from where they are to where they're going to be. And in their mind, they're making assumptions as to where they're going to be. So they'll be like, well, I have $10,000 in my bank account. By then I should have $1 million, and I am capable of this. But you have no idea what you're capable of. First of all, don't make it. So thinking like a child could create a world that is unimaginable for most people. Like, I don't care if you have to come up with unicorns, do it. You can deal with the practical part afterwards. but looking at 5 to 10 years down the road, looking at least 3 of the categories, what are the experiences that you're seeking? And these experiences could be with yourself, with your family, with your community, with whatever you're creating. And really thinking, but not just thinking about it, putting yourself in that picture. And this is what human beings are capable of. We can create reality in our mind. You can close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open. When I, for example, explain, some people might not be able to do it. They might just be able to see it. There's some research around that, but I have a strong feeling that most people will be able to do this. Is that if I tell you, picture yourself on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and there's a beautiful breeze there, the sun is shining, these are developing pictures in your mind. Like, you can actually put yourself there, close your eyes, and feel that breeze. That's what I mean by experiences. And then the second component is your identity, your growth. What do you picture your ideal self to be in there? How do you picture yourself to grow internally and externally? Internally, it could be your sense of connection to your faith, to yourself, to the people around you. It could be your confidence. It could be your ability to do certain things externally, your business skills, whatever. Like, you're picturing that ideal self, how he or she appears to you, and really honing down as like, what is that? And how do you feel in that state? And that part is really important, because if it doesn't connect to your emotions, to your system, and it's just a mental thought, it doesn't do anything. And then the third major category would be contribution. And that goes back to our nature as human beings. We all, by nature, we want to contribute to our family, our community, and people might have objections. But there are a lot of crazy people who don't want to contribute. In fact, they want to harm people. That might be true, but there are reasons for that. And we're beginning to understand those reasons. But by nature, human beings, if the conditions are right, we want to contribute. We don't want to harm. We harm when we feel harmed. And that's a whole different topic we can go to, but that's different. So contribution is one of the key categories that actually connects with your legacy. It connects with your purpose, and so many. What do you see yourself contributing? How do you see yourself contributing to the world that you belong in? So now this is where a few things, as you go through this process, and I walk people through this, and I help them visualize and see it, a couple of things happen. For one thing, people resist, like there's a resistance internally, because they've created all sorts of beliefs. One of those beliefs you shared around religion, or around how they see themselves to be, which is very static mindset versus growth mindset. They don't see themselves changing. They will have resistance internally. If there's resistance, you will have a hard time picturing, you'll have a hard time connecting, feeling. That is a great signal. That means you need to deal with some stuff. So go back to your beliefs, so which you did have to do some of that work. But a couple of things happen with the people who are partially open to it or fully open to it. You will feel a mix of pain and immense pleasure and happiness, peace, and so many things. And some people might just feel pain, and that is a great indication. I've had so many clients who, like, I took them through this process of what they're creating. All they felt was pain, and they couldn't make sense of it. It interrupted everything that they were doing. So it's not one of those processes where you're just gonna like, oh, okay, it's the mental thing I'm going through. No, you're gonna feel it as if you're going through a breakup, as if you're going through something, if you've done it right. And when you feel that, that is an indication that there are things that you haven't processed from your past. Your past is holding you back in some way. But if you can see the future and you can process the pain and you experience this thing and you're able to connect with that future self, that ideal world that you're creating, it just opens up your world in ways. It doesn't completely change everything, but it just opens up a part of your consciousness that was not open before. And so where do goals come in? So if your vision is the world that you're creating, your goals are those timelines towards that vision. They're the linear timelines in your mind that we've created towards that vision. And then the vision is not a vision. And here's the big difference between goals. A goal, you're always striving to achieve some goal in the future. And that carrot and the stick analogy, it's always you're running after a goal. If you hit a goal, you're going to go to the next one, and the next one, the next one, never ending. And everything is in the future. But a vision is not like that. When you see that vision, you experience it here. You're not waiting for something. You begin to, once you see it, you begin to embody aspects of that vision now, whatever you can. So for example, if your vision is, and this is one of my clients who wants to go to Portugal and live there and experience the culture, is that she can't go there right now. She does not have the ability right now, but she's building towards that. Her goals are to build towards that, but her vision needs to be embodied right now. So how does she do that? She takes classes in Portuguese. She watches documentaries. She talks to her husband about it. She imagines going there and experiencing those. And then you can do so much with the technology that we have. You can watch a live video of Portugal and get so much out of it. But the point is, you begin to embody that vision. And this is actually the secret to religions. And whether you talk about Jesus or other teachers, they said that you need to embody this. Like, thinking about religion and believing something doesn't do anything. If you can't embody what you're creating, it doesn't become reality. So when you make that a reality and you set clear strategic goals moving forward towards that vision, it naturally starts. It is real now. You're not waiting for something, but it naturally goes towards that direction. Did I paint a picture of that?
Yeah. No, I think that's a very clear picture. I did a great job not interjecting that entire, I'm not going to interject. Okay.
Just tell me, shut up.
No, because there are so many points where I'm like, yeah. I mean, there are so many this is such a important conversation, and there's so much more to be had with this conversation. And to try to put it into a single podcast episode is like a big task. I mean, it just feels there's so much we could do. Yeah. We do have to wrap up, which is just, I told you before we started, I said, we're not going to have a problem with timelines. It's going to be a problem trying to make sure we stick to our timelines, because when we start talking, it's always, I mean, there's just, we just need to have like an entire day to talk.
Yeah, we definitely do. Can I just add a couple of examples around this before you wrap?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
So I just want to add a couple of real life examples that people might be aware of. Like, pay attention to the people. There are models in the world. There are clues in the world. Pay attention to the people who are doing great things, who are actually, and it doesn't matter who it is, because anybody's heroes could be the villain for the next person. So I'll give you some examples of people that I see this in. So take Elon Musk. It doesn't matter what he does. He has one clear vision. He sees people on Mars. He sees Earth to be sustainable. And he sees the human civilization to be a multi-planetary system. And he sees himself as a person that's at least initiating this process. His vision is so powerful, and listen to his interviews and listen to what he's saying. The interviewer gets confused as he answers. He's like, so you blew up 3 rockets worth multi-million dollars and you didn't think much about it. It's like, well, that's part of the process. Nobody else is doing that. Your company, Tesla, went out of business, almost at the brink of bankruptcy. You didn't give up. You're giving away your patent to the rest of the world. Aren't you concerned about competition? He doesn't give a crap. He's like, that vision is coming real, whether I do it or somebody else is doing it. It's much bigger than him. It's much. Mm-hmm. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. Think of every leader that you've heard of in history who's done something great. They will have a vision that is much bigger than the sum of their goals. The goals become practical timelines. So this is not something I'm making up from my head and my experience. The clues are there in the world. And once you start to pay attention, you will see that if you don't have a vision, you're just following somebody else's vision. And yes, you don't want to do that as a leader.
Right. Yes. And I'm just one that doesn't like to, there are appropriate times to follow, but I love having role models I have I've chosen clear role models for different areas.
You're seeking inspiration. You're not seeking to follow them. You're seeking
That's true.
to be inspired by them. You're not seeking to create exactly what they created. You will create your own creative ways of creating if you're inspired by that thing.
And, you know, I had to come to a clear delineation on that with one of my role models. I just thought, I want to create the exact same thing. And I'm like, no, I'm me. It will be my iteration, my version of that. My mission.
Yeah. And the thing about role models are that they're human beings and they have problems and positive, including everybody that's listening to this and on the call.
This is absolutely true. 1,000,000% true. Okay, so Faisal and we are part of the Space Creators community. You started the Space Creators community because, similar to Elon Musk, you have this vision that far exceeds you. And so you're bringing coaches together to support people. I'm blessed to be one of those, and so excited because I have that shared vision of how do we support humans? How do we help people activate these amazing lives? Do you want to just touch base on that for a moment?
Yes, and I have a bigger vision around this, but specific to the Space Creators community is that I wanted to create a place, and this is something I was seeking when I was going towards this path, a place where people can get all their growth needs met. And it's in the beginning stages. I want to bring trainers from different modalities, whether you need coaching in your personal life, in your business, and within your relationship with your kids, you need perspective, growth, training, anything you need. This would be the one-stop shop. And the way I've set it up and how Julie and other coaches and trainers are helping me develop this place is that this becomes a part of your life, the way you have your Netflix membership. I know people so there's a membership model around that you account for this the way you account for your bills, taxes, everything else. This is an investment in yourself and your family and your business. I have coaches, I have growth and learning and these experiences and consistently going towards my potential as a part of my life consistently. I don't see an end to that. There will be different versions of that. And I don't think it's a good thing to have, especially for people who are have amazing goals and have amazing visions for their life and who are contributing at a greater level, who are leaders. They need to be part of something that helps them be accountable to themselves, to others, helps them to go deeper and really process and analyze whatever they're creating, however they're contributing. We've seen enough leaders in the past few decades who have brought a lot of destruction, some good, but a lot of problems into the world. And most of that is because they were in their head doing that. We still have leaders like that. And I don't care what kind of expert is in the world. The one thing I always question, is this person aware of their fears and biases and beliefs that are driving them to create whatever they're creating here? And you will find that there are a lot of smart, clever people, but they're not necessarily intelligent. They're not necessarily wise. And we need communities like this to bring leaders together to help them grow, help them deal with their past challenges so they don't repeat that in the world. They can get past that. They can start to create something that will serve their community, their family, their community, and the world as a whole. And this is going to be one of the platforms. I feel like I'm hoping that this is one of the platforms where people get to come together around other people from around the world that will help humanity move forward in some way. And that's part of my legacy. I know a lot of coaches and trainers think like that. But it's also, as I look ahead, I see it as a part of a bigger actual physical community, and we come together and really move something forward. It's part of a bigger movement that can potentially happen. But the beginning stages is that you can come join us at Space Creators community and actually see it for yourself and experience it, because it's hard to explain something that's an experience, and see how it actually impacts your life.
I love it. All right. You want to drop links to any way you want people to contact you?
So the main link would be my website, faisalensaun.com. You will find, if you go to the coaching section section, or faisalensaun.com/coaching, you will see the Space Creators community. It might change over time, but if you just Google Faisal Ensaun, you will see all my stuff, my YouTube channel and podcasts and all the weird things that I'm doing.
They're not weird. They're not weird at all. They're empowering to people.
Weird is a good thing in my mind.
Actually, that's true. And I'm like, oh, I got to wrap this up. I have to, since you brought that up, mentioned that my daughter came home from school recently and she said, Mom, I called somebody weird and they got upset. And then I told them that weird is good, or she was called weird. And she's like, thank you. That's such a compliment. And they're like, what? And she's like, well, being weird is great because it means you're being like, we're all kind of weird. We're like, we all have our own weirdness. And I thought at 10 years old to be able to say it's good for me to be weird just made me really excited. And the other kids ended up saying, I want to be weird too.
Yeah. Well, it's celebrating the uniqueness in everybody. And like we all have a common characteristics that we can identify as human beings, as groups, as cultures, but there's a unique side to us, and every uniqueness adds something to the collective of our consciousness, of our movement forward as human beings.
No, I love it. I'm so grateful to be able to share space, over on the podcast with you. I'm so grateful for everything that you have, just helped me with in life, because you've made my world so much better through coaching, and so excited about Space Creators because I know that's going to just empower other people who, at whatever level they're currently at, they'll just be able to step in and start that growth process or accelerate that growth process. And when you see that next part of yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to do the next. I want to keep growing. I want to keep doing this. This is extraordinary, even though it's painful at times. But a good workout is painful at times. So if you are listening and you want more information, make sure that you reach out to Faisal, for that information. You can always, message me over on whatever platform as well. But it is time to wrap up. And you guys are an amazing audience. And I appreciate that you are always pursuing that growth that is going to, just better the world, better you, and better the world around you. Until next time.
Thank you, Julie.
Aw, you're welcome. All right. Until next time, live big, love bigger. Overwhelmed trying to figure out what book you should read next? Head over to julieholly.com and download the best books reading list. I've personally read the books I'm recommending for adults and kids ages 8 and older, and you can get a sneak peek even as to the books I'm considering reading next. Download this list and dive into your next best book. Head over to julieholly.com to download the list and dive into your next best book.